Good evening. I think we'll try to start here pretty much on time. Good evening. I am George Margulies, Chair of the County's Charter Review Commission. In a few minutes, I will ask my colleagues on the commission to introduce themselves. Welcome to the fourth of 5 listening sessions that the commission is holding in each of the 5 county council districts in the course of many weeks. And today is in District 3. There's a handout of the commission's hearing is out in front there at the table where you came in. That provides some background to the commission in today's session. The county's charter, as you may know, is akin to the county's constitution. The commission's charge is to review its provisions and make recommendations to the county council for amendments to the charter that may be placed on the ballot every other November for the voters to decide whether to adopt or not. We also can recommend to keep matters just as they are. This commission, having been appointed last year to a 4-year term, is concerned with matters to be placed on the ballot for November of this year and November 2022. The issue before us today is whether any changes to the current structure and size of the county council are warranted. That structure is 4 at-large members and 5 district members, comprising a 9-member county council. The flip side of this handout provides the exact language of the current charter under review. This topic has been examined to varying degrees by past commissions and often flagged for further study. We have no specific proposal on the table, but rather wish to hear and gather public input on your perceptions of the strengths and limitations of the current structure. Should you believe changes are in order, we desire to know your rationale. To encourage diverse thinking, the commission decided to hold these listening sessions throughout the county, 1 in each of the 5 council districts. We'll hear first from those who signed up in advance who haven't testified previously. We'll also be glad to hear, though, from those who've come today who didn't have the opportunity to sign up in advance. Moreover, we welcome written testimony to be submitted to the commission's website, which is listed on the handout. Everyone who has signed up in advance was informed that they had 3 minutes to speak. You're free to submit longer written testimony for the record. Still, given the time we've allotted for this session, an hour and a half, I hope to be flexible depending on the number of speakers. There's one more listening session after today's, which is scheduled for March 23rd from 7 to 8:30 p.m. in Germantown at the Up County Regional Services Center in District 2. Please do advise your colleagues and neighbors to sign up to speak. Given the number of listening sessions, we may have different commissioners from the 11-member commission attending each of the sessions in person. However, all commissioners will have access to the written submissions and the video recordings. There is a video being made of today's session. Before we go further, I'd like to ask my fellow commissioners to introduce themselves. Perry, you want to start?
Good evening. My name is Perry Taylor, and I reside in Silver Spring, Maryland.
Mike.
Good evening. My name is Perry Paler, and I reside in Silver Spring, Maryland.
Susan Miles, also live in Silver Spring.
I'm Larry Lauer from Albany.
I'm Laura Gadaris. I also live in Silver Spring.
Kathy Kuglis, Gaithersburg.
Ron Stubblefield, Silver Spring, but Burtonsville.
Thank you. As I call upon each speaker, please advise us of where in the county you reside. Also, if you represent an organization or business, please so advise us. If you have brought copies of your testimony, please hand them to staff over here to my right, your left. The commissioners may have questions after they listen. In the interest of time, I'd ask commissioners to please limit themselves to ask clarifying questions and refrain from making their own comments as to their thinking on the issue before us. Depending on the number of speakers, I may have to limit questions. Let's begin. When you're ready to speak, and I call your name, please come up to the table here in front of us. You'll see microphones, and you'll need to press the yellow button at the table here to activate the mic, And when you're done speaking, and that will turn on a red light, which says the mic is live. If you can remember, you won't be killed if you don't. Turn off the mic when you're done speaking, and it'll go back to yellow. For those who have spoken at previous sessions, I'm going to respectfully ask that you not repeat your testimony, but please do share with us and the commission any additional or new thoughts that will help us come to a decision. Those who have spoken previously, we're going to ask you to speak after others have spoken for the first time. So let me call those who have signed up today for the first time. We have Gail Weiss. You can pick whatever chair you'd like. Isn't that the nice thing? Now, one chair has a big prize under it, so. Push the button, which is yellow, turn it to red. Right, over all the way to the left. There you go.
Got it. Okay, there we go. My name is Gail Weiss. I live in Bethesda, Maryland, and I'm a lifelong Montgomery County citizen. Lived here my whole life, except for 2.5 years when I lived out of the country with my parents. What propelled me to feel the need to speak is that I came to 2 of the previous 3 listening sessions and heard about the one that I did not attend, where the at-large council members have either attended, like Mr. Glass is behind me now again today, or have spoken. On the website for the Charter Review Commission, as I already sent you the screenshot, I'm the one who sent you guys the email letter. You all specified, this didn't come from me, this came from you, that you specified that these listening sessions are for residents. As I spoke to Mr. Albornoz, I hope I'm saying Albornoz, after the last session, who I have never met before, he seems like a tremendously nice guy, and I told him that. I said, but the council members, and again, this is not the commissioner's fault. I'm a big proponent of free speech, and you all are not in a position to, I don't think, prohibit any resident from speaking. But out of respect for unelected residents, because obviously council members are residents too, out of respect for voters, the council members should leave these 7.5 hours of these cumulative listening sessions for unelected residents. They have the entire rest of their 4-year term to interact with voters. In fact, their appearance at these listening sessions underscores what a problem the at-large positions are, in that if they can't foster a relationship with voters in all of the rest of their time, and they need to encroach on our time here that has been specifically set aside, stipulated by you all to be for residents, there's a problem. So, and I asked Gabe when I spoke with him, I said, you know, out of respect for residents, I wish that he would pass along my comments to the rest of his council members. And it honestly is very disrespectful, I feel, to residents to have them, frankly, even attend, because that is intimidating to us. I'm a little tough to intimidate, but others might not be. To have them attend this when citizens should be able to speak freely of their thoughts and their feelings about the structure of our county government, or even worse, to take up our time that you all have specifically said you want to hear from us, and they're taking up time. In fact, at the last listening session in Olney, based on some of the comments that the other speakers had made, which, as you can see, I'm not speaking from any written prepared notes or anything like that, and I didn't take notes there, so I don't remember what it was that prompted a thought for me there. But I would have spoken. I would have, like you have done at the other sessions, you said, okay, and if there's anyone who hasn't signed up, if you want to speak, raise your hand or whatever. I would have, but old Gabe, he ran out the clock on me. So I couldn't do it. So that's just a very sort of structural problem that I wanted to have on the record and on the video with these listening sessions. That is just not right. And the council members should respect citizens to have this 7.5 measly hours to be heard. That's my opinion. With regard to the size and structure of the government, very briefly, I will simply say that the smaller and more accountable a district is of anything, whether it's congressional or county council or what have you, the better representation, the better dialogue you're going to have between constituent and elected official. There's going to be more access to that elected official. It just makes sense. It's like a parent who has one child versus a parent that has 20 children. The parent that has one child, they're going to be able to have a lot more attention than one who's got 20 kids. So I vehemently would be opposed to enlarging our county government in any way, shape, or form. And given the seemingly constant structural deficit that this county council runs, enlarging it that would cost more money just makes no sense to me at all. But I think we can do, like my husband who's a Marine, we can do more with less, meaning we don't have to enlarge the government, but if we restructure it so that all 9 seats are specific district seats, then each district is going to be far smaller, which means each voter gets a much more direct and clear and, most importantly, accountable relationship to their elected official. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weiss. As to your, I don't know what you call it, complaint or concern that you expressed in the beginning, with all due respect, everyone is welcome to attend these forums, these listening sessions, including council members in whose chamber we're meeting tonight. From your past communications with this commission, I don't sense that you're someone, and you stated, who's likely to be intimidated, although I know you've stated that you're also speaking for others. If council members wish to testify, I will call upon them after the public has spoken. In fact, excuse me, let me finish. In fact, at the last session, which I wasn't able to be in attendance at because I was out of town, Councilmember Albornoz spoke at the end. He was the last one who spoke after everyone else had spoken. So council members themselves have their own right to speak at forums. Clearly, you're right. The main purpose of these forums are to hear from the public, and we have been hearing from the public. I've been calling upon, as did my vice chair to my left, called upon everyone who wanted to speak in the past, and will continue to do so. We haven't cut anybody off. But the fact is that if council members wish to attend, they have every right to do so. As I said this evening, we're in their chambers.
Well, with all due respect, these are our chambers.
You're right. They are our chambers. I understand it. Thank you. Euphemistically, I stated. You're obviously right. This is the public's chambers. But the fact of the matter is they have a right to attend.
Absolutely.
And they have a right to speak.
Absolutely.
But I will let the public speak first. So
Sure.
thank you. And I appreciate
Yeah, no,
your
as I
comment.
said, I don't blame you guys for that. I put it
Blame
on to the council members out of respect for residents. It is up to them, and it is on them, in my opinion, as to what they choose to do. And I am a robust supporter of the First Amendment, absolutely. And they have every right to do it, whether it's respectful to us that they do it or not, That's the discussion.
I can't speak for them. My guess is they're respecting you by coming to hear you
Sure.
in person. All right. Any questions of Ms. Weiss? No, thank you.
Thanks.
Turn it off, please. Thank you. You did a great job in doing that. All right. Next, I have Ms. Harris. Is Ms. Harris here? Nope. Actually, I shouldn't have called upon Ms. Harris because she had previously spoken. Of course, she has a right to speak again if she comes in later. Next, we have Mr. Lautman. Come forward. I see Mr. Lautman here. Anyone. Pick your choice. And just the button on the left, if you would push it from yellow to red. But you can't push your chair back. Your chair doesn't go backwards. Nope, in front of you. There you go. Perfect.
Good evening. My name is Mark Lautman, and I am a resident of Rockville, District 1, Andrew Friedson, and I am
Rockville is District 3.
I'm District 1.
You're in District 1?
You understand? I live in Post Office, Rockville, but right south of Montrose Road.
You're correct.
So-
You're correct.
As far as I know, it's Andrew Friedson.
I only said that because I live in Rockville. I'm in District 3. We're in District 3 right now in Rockville.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for correcting me.
And I am the treasurer of the referendum effort 9 Districts for Montgomery County. So I've been watching the videos of the previous sessions, and a lot of testimony and discussion has been about the local interaction between the residents and the at-larges or the districts, but I'm going to talk about at-large from a more national perspective. Hans Riemer, right, he's a 3-term at-large, and he, in his newsletters and in his interviews, he tells us that he looks to the prominent progressive counties on the West Coast for inspiration for some of his work. And personally, I think that's laudable, and Mark Elrich has mentioned that he does similar research, and that's all good. So what are those prominent progressive counties on the West Coast? Mr. Riemer himself mentions Santa Clara County, and he mentions San Francisco County. He mentions Portland, that's in Multnomah County, Oregon, and he mentions Seattle, that's in King County, Washington. And I'm going to throw into the mix Marin County, right, also in California. And none of those prominent progressive counties on the West Coast have any at-large. None of them at all. If at-large really were some type of representation and looking at the county view and it's empowering, then you would expect that at those prominent counties on the West Coast that we would find one overworked, underpaid, and lonely at large. But there are none, and you have to wonder why. Now, San Francisco actually did have at large for some time until the year 1976 when it crashed and burned. And here's what happened. Harvey Milk, he was the martyr to bring LGBT into mainstream American politics. You can draw a line from Harvey Milk to Mayor Pete, and I will miss him, to our own Evan Glass. He started it. And he had made 2 attempts to run for a seat on the county council there in San Francisco, but it was all 5, they were all at large, so he lost twice because he was blocked out by a small, entitled group of voters that because of the plurality voting, they blocked out everybody, and they determined 100% of the at-large on the county council there. So Mr. Milk and his constituency, they made a referendum, just like we are, to abolish the at-large and to go to all-district voting. And he prevailed in 1976, just like we will prevail in 2020. And what happened? On his first attempt in district voting, he won. And it's not about him. It's about his constituency. A significant group of voters that were locked out by at-large, and they got their share of participation in making policy. This is the proof that at-large is exclusionary. Some demographic is always blocked out. And this is why at-large has always been excoriated and denounced in the United States Supreme Court, time and time again. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she called it a form of control. Sandra Day O'Connor, Thurgood Marshall, here I have the quote from Thurgood Marshall. What does he say? Single-member districts are preferable to large multi-member districts because they more closely reflect voter preferences. That was Thurgood Marshall in 1980. And Chief Justice Earl Warren of Brown versus Board of Education, but in a different case, Allen versus Board of Elections, what does he say about at-large? This type of change to at-large could nullify voters' ability to elect the candidate of their choice, just as would prohibiting some of them from voting. This is from the United States Supreme Court, Sandra Day O'Connor to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. That is an ideological spectrum. So we in 9 districts, we are walking along a path that was prepared for us by those 4 justices, by Harvey Milk, and by other American landmarks that we have yet to identify, and we would like you to walk on that path with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lautman. Any questions from the commissioners? Thank you. Our next speaker is Sharon Bauer. Is Sharon Bauer here? Okay, if she comes in, she had signed up to speak tonight. How about Amy Wycoff? As Ms. Wycoff is coming forward, I do want to acknowledge the presence of Councilmember Glass, at-large member. Thank you for coming.
Good evening. My name is Amy Wycoff. I've lived in...
I apologize for mispronouncing your name.
Oh, that's all right. I've lived in the county for 32 years. I live in Bethesda, but a block from Kensington, which in turn is just about a mile and a half from Wheaton, which will matter here. Thank you for holding these hearings on the future structure of the Montgomery County Council. I support the elimination of at-large council seats in favor of 9 smaller and more compact district seats. The current structure was put in place 30 years ago when the population was much smaller and was concentrated down county. Since that time, the county population has grown by over 50%, with a large portion of that growth being up county. If you look at the attached map, which is 3rd page in your thing, you will see that 7 of 9 council members, including the county executive, live south and east of North Bethesda, a small area often called the Down County Crescent. However, only 30% of county residents live in this area, while the other 70% of us are represented by only 2 council members. Another way to look at this underrepresentation is that those 2 council members must each be the voice for 368,000 people, while each of the 7 council members in the Silver Spring and Tacoma Park area speak for only 45,000 people each. I live near Wheaton, Maryland, one of those areas that has not had a voice in the county council. I was moved by the testimony presented by Kimberlyn Persuade, I don't know how to pronounce her name, chair of 9 districts for MoCo and a community activist in the Wheaton area. She spearheaded the creation of the Wheaton Coalition to address inequalities impacting the quality of life in Wheaton. She mentioned problems including illegal accessory apartments and unregistered rooming houses, leading to overcrowding and enormous amounts of garbage. The latter, in turn, led to an infestation of roaches, black birds, and rats. And yet, when the Wheaton Coalition tried to get help from the county council, it was given the runaround. She's discovered that while the at-large members may have an equal vote in the council, their voice does not count as much as the district council members. Kimlin further pointed out that with at-large candidate campaign funds needing to stretch across the entire county, Wheaton and other low-voting communities are easily left out. Now is the time to address this glaring inequality because district boundaries will be drawn after the 2020 census and will be in place for 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Thank you. Is there anyone else here who wishes to testify who has not testified previously? And then I will get to those who've testified previously. Gentleman in the back row. A long walk up to the front, I know. We take your time. The button on the left.
It's not still on. Now
There
it
you
is.
go.
Yellow is off. Red is on. How are you?
It seems counterintuitive, right? That red should
It does,
be on,
but
right?
my TV's even more confusing. I'm Ed Amatetti. I live near Quince Orchard High School. I also ran for county council in District 2. I think going to 9 districts and eliminating all at-large seats would be one of the best things you could do in this county. I'm going to try to not bring up the general reasons, but to try to bring it to Montgomery County and what's been going on as a result of at-large seats and other matters. But central to the argument of at-large seats is that presumably these elected officials would represent the best interests of the whole county. It would suggest that they would campaign and canvass all around the county and meet with more of the folks, not less of the folks. And therefore, their constituency would be more diverse and more inclusive. In fact, the opposite is happening in our county, and a lot of it is because of the at-large seats. We are becoming increasingly concentrated in our council geographically, policy-wise, ideologically. I'm going to make an estimate that none of them spend more than 1% of their time in Upper County. And the at-large members of the council are even more homogeneous and more oriented towards the small part of down county that wields the most power. For Upper County, it's meant they haven't really had representation for a very long time. It's why M83 can't be built, even though it's been on the master plan and the land has been set aside since the 1950s. It's why the elected officials, local officials, actually fight against trying to improve the longest commutes in our county by not widening things like I-270 or the American Legion Bridge. While down county gets a much more expensive and much less cost-effective transportation solution called the Purple Line. It's also not surprising, and it's a reason why Montgomery Village has almost all of the worst schools in Montgomery County and some of the worst schools in the entire state of Maryland outside of Baltimore County and Prince George's County, because they also don't have the representation. It's also why there hasn't been, the Republicans haven't won an election in the 21st century in Montgomery County. How I relate this to at-large seats, and I appreciated the gentleman who talked about, who ran through the course of history from Harvey Milk and on from there. At-large seats, especially in a large county like this, skews things towards the politically sophisticated, politically organized, and special interest groups. It makes it easier for those people to get elected and those people to get their people elected. Down county dominates the political process because it has demographic advantages. It's moneyed. It is sophisticated politically and organized. They live closer together, which also makes it easier. they are kind of insiders with the government, and they're more established communities. They've been here for a very long time, and that gives them all those advantages. They even have time of life advantages. They are more older, retired, they've gone mostly up the career ladder, and they get very political. Up county, you have people with 3 kids, all under the age of 7. The father's a coach of 2 teams. The mother has 2 children with the measles. They're all trying to go up a career ladder, and they can't get involved. And yet the current council members often insult them by saying, you guys got to vote more or organize more. They're talking to coaches, they're talking to parents, they're talking to people who are trying to go up the career ladder. They're very busy in their lives. So we end up with what we've had, which is not what we want. I truly believe the 9-district scenario with the smaller districts will give a voice for our most disenfranchised residents in our county. The poor, the younger, the less established, the immigrants, whatever. And I think that Harvey Milk thing was a good way of explaining what happened in another county, and it's happened here. So I thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for commissioners? Mr. Paler?
Yeah, during your presentation, you indicated that at-large members spend less than 1% up county. Do you have any data to support that? Like, have you looked at any
I said I would
calendars?
estimate here, but I can tell the
What
story.
would you base that estimation?
I'll tell a story, though.
Well, no, I'm not asking for a story. I heard your story. Do you have any data or any evidence that would support that?
It would require some of these council members to be up in, let's say, Poolsville more than once every 100 days. I can't imagine that that's happening in Poolsville, as an example, or Damascus. There was an occasion, there was a coalition for Up County. And they formed a coalition, and they had a forum of council members. 3 showed up. They couldn't believe how excited they were. None of them had ever seen 3 council members at the same time anywhere up there. And it was about the transportation issue, which they lost on all the things that they were looking for. That's what I base it on. And I would really be surprised if they're up there more often. The council member I ran against while I was door knocking 12,000 houses was in Silver Spring in campaign rallies with the gentleman running against Hogan for governor. Nobody had ever seen him at their houses when I was door knocking. So it's just what happens. It's explaining the, for lack of a better word, the Harvey Milk situation. And I don't have numbers, though, that say I don't know where they are at every second of the day. I would be shocked if it was more than 1%. I can guarantee it's not more than 5%.
And have you ever seen any of the calendars of the council persons?
I have, and I'm involved. I'm also president of the Montgomery County Taxpayers League. I've run for office. I know how many meetings send me directly into Silver Spring, where the convention center is, where all the town centers are. There are new ones going up in Wheaton and all that. You don't have a Clarksburg town center, and all the political facilities point you downtown. I live near Quince Orchard High School. I'm a stone's throw from what is considered the Upper County Citizens Advisory Board in Germantown. There's as much land almost north of them as there are south of them, and that's called Upper County. You know Clarksburg is the fastest growing city and always in the top 10 in the country. And so that's been missed, and they've missed their roads that they needed that were promised in 1958. So, but I do appreciate, I don't want to be loose with 1% and 5%. Thank you.
Any other questions here? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sharon Bauer, she come in? Any other individuals who haven't spoken previously? Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I had not planned to speak. I always try to educate myself. I'm Brigitta Mulliken. I'm a 55-year resident in Rockville, and I was a candidate for the city of Rockville this past election. And I will tell you that I'm very interested in this 9-district representation. I've been educating myself, and I plan to get involved. I applaud the committee who's reaching out to the community to let them know the bad representation, so to speak. And when people see the map, they can really identify, because most people don't follow the city council, the county council, or even the city council. So as a representation here, you see how hard it is to get people out to even come to these kind of hearings, and yet it's a very, very, very important representation. I know in Rockville, I know that we have the same issue. The city of Rockville actually is going to have a charter review that's going to look at this by increasing maybe the council and having them by district. I can tell you that I live in District 5. It's a Rockville, and the county calls it a ward. Rockville calls it a District 5. We've not had a representation on the city council since 1985 when John Tyner was on there. I don't know if you know the name, but we have the same issue as the county. We're going to go through the same process and go through public hearing, but I'm here just to support what the charter is doing, in support of you all reaching out to the community. And I will be going door to door to get signatures for the petition, and I hope this gets on the ballot and that people educate themselves, because it's very, very difficult to reach a lot of people. So I'm not here to make a big speech, because I know that you've heard everything. I think Amy described it very well, with the chart, and I learned something new about other communities. Very interesting, and I hope you all do the right thing. And thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mulliken. Any questions? Don't run away if there are any questions. Now you can run away. Oh. Susan? Come back, Brigitte. Miss Susan has a question. Ms. Miles has a question. Now you can turn back your microphone.
Yes.
I always get, right, sorry about that. I always get confused as far as Rockville and then the other Rockville, and how that fits.
There's 2 Rockvilles?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Or Rockville City and the city, or whatever.
I can explain that.
But in terms of that fitting in with districting that we're looking at, would your area be part of ours, plus you have your own, or?
No, it's totally separate.
Totally.
Totally separate, because City of Rockville is only 13.5 square miles. We have 10 districts in that corporate limit. And what happens is that all of the zip codes are not Rockville. In other words, 2854, part of it is Potomac, part of it's Rockville. That's the same true for, I forget the other one, 2852. In other words, if you look at the city corporate limits, those are Rockville voters. A lot of people have a Rockville address. They're not in the corporate limit. I always tell people, if you pay city tax, you know that you're in the city. The problem is when you're a renter, you don't know that, because the rent is the tax is paid by the owner of the house, okay? But it happens all the time. We get people from Durwood who have a Rockville address, and they come and speak at community forum. They can speak, but they're really not part of Rockville. So the answer to your question is, I know all of the 10 districts. I know all the streets. I've walked them 4 times, okay? So, just to the answer, it's not the same. The concept's the same like you all have, but we have all at large. We have 4 council members that are all at large. And what we're saying is, some of us, because it's not there, that we should have a council member for 2 districts maybe, and increase the council. It's a different animal than you all have, but we have the same. I can tell you that the council members tend to be in the same area, and they're not representing all the 10 areas. But it is what it is until it gets changed. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Okay. Now I'll turn it.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Let me call upon those who I have here who have previously testified. that I believe may be here. Hesty Harris, has she come in? No. How about Omar Lazo? No. Is there a Sam Fanatis? Nope. That's 3 strikes. I hope I'm not out. What? But there is another individual who wishes to speak. Please come forward. What? Yeah, right. The one on the left, that's yellow. Right. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Alice Ortuzar, and I thank you for this opportunity. I apologize for arriving late. I just wanted to express my concerns. I remember
You live
when,
where? Where do you live?
in Ashton, the Ashton-only area is where
Thank you.
I'm registered to vote. I remember when this was on the ballot, I think it was to eliminate the at-large and make every seat, 9 seats, a district seat, and that was defeated by the residents. And I remember some of the pros and cons, and I guess that's just what I would like to review. I apologize for arriving late. And
No apology necessary.
the buses didn't cooperate. The pros and cons were by eliminating the at-large seats, it possibly could eliminate what is considered to be a preponderance of influence by the developers because it costs so much more to run at large than in a smaller district size in terms of the resources for the candidates. So that was one considered advantage. And I compared what the size of the districts would be to our state legislative districts. And I've always felt that those have been competitive with good choices. And I saw no problem in eliminating the at-large and creating all district seats. Others felt that it would make the council as individuals more parochial in how they viewed an issue or what issues they would represent. So I guess those were the main concerns at the time that probably would continue to be considerations. And I'm sorry that I missed any examples of other localities that have somehow worked it out where they have smaller districts, but they don't seem to have the parochialism that was feared by eliminating the at-large and creating individual districts. I think bigger concerns at this point are the amount of money, is the amount of money it takes to run for an at-large seat and the opportunities for developers to have more influence than individual residents. So, and that to me, I think, is actually a very valid consideration, especially as races become more and more expensive. And I don't think the parochialism that was considered a possible negative is visible in our legislative districts. I don't see that at all, and I find the Maryland General Assembly. I've lived in California. I grew up in Chicago, where my uncles handed out chickens at the polling places on election night. Everything they say about Mayor Daley's Chicago is true. But I actually have been very impressed. I've lived here since the end of 1988, and was just amazed when I would call and ask about a portion of a bill or something in the bill that I wanted to clarify, and sometimes the elected official would actually get on the phone with me, even though I wasn't necessarily from that person's district. So actually, I think that size of district seems to work very well and serve the residents of the county, always with good choices from what I've seen, especially since the 1990s, where I think, at least in the Ashton-only area, we certainly have been able to choose from far better candidates than we had when I first moved here, I have to say. So I think it works, and that should be a strong consideration, and eliminating the at-large seats for all district seats. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, commissioners? Okay. Anyone else who wishes to speak this evening? Going once? Going twice? I see somebody on the third try. You in the yellow.
Come on down.
On the left, on the left. Yeah, you got it. You're on.
Okay.
You're on.
So I don't have any prepared remarks, and
That's all right.
I pretty much wanted to come to listen to, and I was mostly hoping to hear
Speak a little bit more into the mic.
I was
Thank you.
hoping to hear something from the other side, because to me, it's like I couldn't understand why.
Your name and
sorry.
where you're from.
Elaine Schuler, I live in Bethesda.
Thank you.
And I couldn't understand why people wouldn't want the 9 districts. It just seems like a no-brainer to me. A couple things came to mind. If everybody's from the same district and they're all, kind of think the same, it's like, I know they say, great minds think alike, but they also say if 2 minds think alike, you don't need one of them. So it's like, and I wanted to hear the other side, because I was like, is there something I'm missing? I don't know, because there's no debate. Basically just, I don't know why you wouldn't want to give people equal representation. So I guess that was, like I said, I didn't have any prepared remarks, but it just seems like it would be very unfair. And I just trying to wrap my head around that, but there's probably more I'd want to say, but I should have written
right.
something
You're
down.
being very
So, like I
articulate.
said, I just kind of wanted to hear what other people were thinking. So, and whatever you do, I would think we should not expand the county council. I think we should try the 9 districts first, and maybe that's why, to see if people are overworked, or, maybe that would go away with, having 9 separate districts rather than enlarging, the number of people on the council. So, anyway, I guess that's it. Mark.
Thank you, Ms. Schuler, for coming down. Any questions of Ms. Schuler? Okay. Laura?
I don't actually have a question, but I just wanted to clarify. I know it appears like we have time to, a luxury of time to have more discussion, but I think we are trying to set a consistent precedent of not, engaging in a major dialogue and us offering our opinions, as George said at the beginning. So with that in mind, I would just say, there are the recordings of the other sessions, and there has been a little more representation of both sides of the argument, so it at least points you there. I'm sorry that we can't, bookmark them so you can skip to the people you want to hear from, but at least that's something that you can do at your convenience.
Yeah, those videos are on our website of the last 3 sessions.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Anyone else who wishes to speak this evening? Going once? She spoke in the third one. Going once? Going twice? Going 3 times? Okay. Assuming there is no one else who wishes to speak, we will consider this listening session over. As stated earlier, the next one will be held on March 23rd from 7 to 8:30 p.m. at the Up County Regional Service Center in Germantown in District 2. Do please advise your friends and colleagues to sign up at our website. Written testimony is always welcome by being sent to the Commission's website. Councilmember Glass, you wish to speak? All right. Well, and going 3rd time was an opportunity, but yes.
Third time for the audience.
Okay. All right. Thank you for honoring my request that you don't speak until everybody in the public speaks.
I'm a very good listener,
I'm
which
glad
is
to hear
why
that.
this is the second meeting that I've attended. And for
And
those
you
of you
didn't
who-
speak, I would note for the record, at the first time.
Evan Glass resident. And so, the first time I came, I didn't speak. I said I was there to listen. And I am continuing to listen. But because the last speaker said that nobody had spoken up about the current system, I felt compelled to help educate those who wanted to hear the other side, and so I appreciate the opportunity. And I'll be brief because I know we have spoken multiple times, but this time I'll speak for those who haven't heard me before. There are communities around here that continue to expand the ability to represent all residents, and do so by expanding the number of council members that they have, making sure that there are smaller districts so that individuals can be more representative. In the District of Columbia, there are 13 council members and there are 4 at large. In Prince George's County, they just expanded from 9 to 11, and that expansion of 2 were at-large council members. But the comparisons to some of the other counties and other parts of the country, I can't speak to how all of that has undergone, but it's been mentioned a few times, the late San Francisco Supervisor Harvey Milk, and let's be clear, as the first LGBTQ member of the council, what we're talking about is not diversity in gender or sexual orientation. The important point to take away from that was that they went to districts, and we have districts. We also have at-large members, whereby everyone is represented by a majority. And I understand that there's diversity of opinion, there's diversity of thought, and that's what elections are for. If you don't like your representative, if you don't like your council member, be it a district or at large, you can vote. And just by having smaller districts, as has been noted before, doesn't mean that soccer moms and soccer dads are going to turn out and vote. It's not a fair comparison. And last thing I'll say, it's also been mentioned about the cost of running campaigns. I'm very proud to say that one of the last times I sat here on this side of the dais was to testify in support of public financing. Way back in 2014. I think I sat right over there and testified in support of public financing, and all 4 members of the county, all four at-large members of the county council participate in public financing, and 8 of the 10 top-tier candidates participated in public financing, particularly on the Democratic side. And so money has been democratized because we don't accept special interest contributions. We don't accept money from labor organizations. We don't accept money from developers. We accept money from individuals. And I'm proud to say that I received about 1,000 contributions from residents all throughout Montgomery County because I traveled to every part of Montgomery County. I had approximately 90 meet and greets during the campaign in every corner, from Tacoma Park and Potomac and Bethesda to Poolsville and Brinklow, and all places in between. And you can't adequately win an election here. You can't adequately be a good member of the council if you don't continue going to all those parts of the county. And last thing I will say is the council right now, we are talking about capital improvement projects, about infrastructure needs here in the county. And I can tell you that the district council members want to make sure that their districts receive as many improvements as possible, and that's their prerogative. That's what they're supposed to do. But as has been noted, we don't have the money for every project that's needed right now. And so what do? We look to some of the at-large members to figure out how we equitably apply our capital improvement program fairly throughout the county in a way that is budgetarily responsible. That's happening right now. And so I want you to think about that, because the budget will come out on March 15th, March 16th. And the beauty of the current system is we do have the at-large members who do travel throughout the county and are looking out for the 1.1 million residents to make sure that we provide services for everyone. And if people do not feel they're being adequately served, they should contact their district council member. And if they don't think they're being served by their district council member, they have 4 additional council members to reach out to. That's how this system works. And I thank all of you for engaging in this conversation, going to the 5 corners of the county. And I want to thank everyone who's spending their weekends and evenings talking about this. Democracy is important. And if we think that smaller districts are the goal, then it shouldn't be just confined to 9 districts. It should be confined to that goal, which, if we follow the pattern of other places, might be an expansion to create additional districts that way. I wouldn't limit your scope in the pursuit of whatever goal you have in mind, but I think it is important to state that the at-large members work very hard to represent every corner of this county. And it is a large and beautifully diverse place, as are the members of our county council, the most racially diverse council we've ever had. And so I leave you with that thought, and again, appreciate all the time that you all have put into this endeavor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Glass. Ron?
Just a question,
Sure.
Because one thing I'm still a little puzzled about. There is another commission for redistricting, as I understand it, right? So if we recommended nothing, what is the purpose of that other redistricting commission?
That is a very good question. So every 10 years, we have a census, and out of that census, we redraw our boundaries, political boundaries. We do it at the county council, we do it at the General Assembly, we do it at the U.S. Congress. And so what will be redrawn are the 5 districts. 10 years ago, the last time this was taken up, I believe that the Redistricting Commission actually looked into some of these questions as well. Whether or not they have the authority, I'll leave to our attorneys. But the Redistricting Committee or Commission, once that's constituted, if you don't think that the 5 districts as currently drawn are good or equitable or fair, the Redistricting Committee can redraw them in what fair and equitable way they find. Because look at the maps 10 years ago, and they were different. But that is a mandated requirement at governments all across the board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of Councilmember Glass? Thank you, Councilmember Glass. Okay.
I had to ask you a question. I'm sitting at your seat.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Well, thank you, everybody, for your participation today. So lastly, I want to acknowledge the efforts of Christine Wellens over here to my right for everything, for handling the logistics for today's listening session, to handling the signups, to the issuance of the press release, so as to help the commission carry out its responsibilities. So thank you all for coming this evening. And again, if anybody wants to come, or tell your neighbors and friends to come to the session in Germantown in a couple of weeks. Thank you, everybody. Good night.